嗱，相信對好多馬迷嚟講咧，對賀賢比較深刻嘅印象咧，佢曾經訓練過話喺一代馬后大花。咁其實除咗大花之外咧，佢喺外國咧都有好多叻嘅馬女咧訓練過出嚟嘅。你估稍後時間佢會引入啲優質嘅黐馬嚟香港服役啊嗱 ？Eva，she won the Melbourne Cup and a little bit surprised that people will think how come David will give up such a good fillies and decided to start his career in Hong Kong?
If you probably had have put that to me and said there's 2 more Melbourne Cups there if you stay here or you can go to Hong Kong, maybe I wouldn't have come to Hong Kong. She was a great mare and she was just still immature when I had her in that first Melbourne Cup and you know, she just kept on improving and getting better and I think it was a great move that she went from Flemington being trained at the track to the country environment of the Freedmans and I think that prolonged her career. And she was also fortunate enough to get, you know, a couple of wet tracks along the way, which helped her as well. So, yeah, I think it's been a good result for everybody.
I know that when go back to time in 1992, you were already in Hong Kong, international race, bringing the horse Repetitive Revenge to Hong Kong. Is it by the time you were just 28, you already would like to train in Hong Kong? Give you very good impressions by the time?
Oh, look, I was very young. I was very new in my training career, and it was some of the you know, my best clients. So it was all a very exciting time and you know, I probably learned a hell of a lot from that experience. That horse had probably really shouldn't have travelled. He'd had a hectic campaign. He'd won 10 races in that 12 months prior to him coming and he was quite tired when he got here and you know, I continued to work him hard and he probably didn't have much left in him when he performed on the day. But as I said, it was a great learning experience. It was certainly very exciting, and you know, we walked away from Hong Kong certainly thinking we'd like to come back, definitely.
When you start your really have set a target to come to train in Hong Kong, when you make this decision?
Well, I never really had a target. I was always sort of chasing my goals, just trying to improve and get better. And you know, I obviously started in Adelaide and moved to Melbourne, and you know, the Spring Carnival became the big thing where, you know, that's where everybody wanted to have success, and you know, we achieved some great things down there. And you know, I trained 8 winners, one Melbourne Cup week, which was you know, a phenomenal experience, and you know, it's really set me up. You know, we went on and won the Derby the following year, and you know, and then it led to the Melbourne Cup, and then of course I bought Silent Witness as a young horse. He was a very, very laid back, unassuming horse, and he just did his job. Whatever he had to do, he would do it. You're working with a maiden horse, he'd keep up with a maiden horse. You're working with a Class 1 horse, he'd keep up with a Class 1 horse. But he had, you know, very little experience, and he took to it all very quickly, and when he went to the trials and won by 5 lengths with his ears pricked, it was job done for him. He was good enough to come, and that's as far as we had to get. So couldn't really measure how much more he had, but he was pretty good from the first trial, that's for sure. Moving to Hong Kong was, it wasn't sort of always in the pipeline for me, but there was another trainer called Robert Smurden who said to me one day, he said, you know, you should think about going, you know. He said, you've done everything here, you don't need to prove anything more. You know, take up the challenge in Hong Kong. So once I came up to watch Silent Witness in the international race, and at that time, you know, I spoke to the Jockey Club and it became available to get the opportunity for an interview. So it progressed and progressed, and then I didn't get the job. Paul O'Sullivan got the job ahead of me, and Armin Lee both had their licences in the same year. And then 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, Ivan Allen decided to retire. So I got a late call up and asked if I would still be interested. So I was on the back foot originally, you know. I was one of 3 trainers that started in 1 year, and that's always a difficult thing when 3 start together. But I was also 2 months behind them. So I didn't have too much to work with when we first got here. But look, it is what it is, and you know, we slowly got a bit of support and we got things going, and you know, Absolute Champion came along, and yeah, that created a lot more interest, and things got going pretty well. But to reach the next level is even harder, and I think perhaps you need a little bit more understanding, a little bit more support of how Hong Kong works, and it takes a bit of time, and if you don't get the right horses at the right time, you know, it's easily, it makes things a lot more difficult to keep progressing. So yeah, perhaps I would like to have achieved a bit more than what I have, but we're still here, we're still going well, and you know, I think in this game you never know what's around the corner, and maybe there's a big year ahead.
In Hong Kong, it's very common that they like to compare. You know, Australian trainer, they say, oh, John Moore, John Size, and is big trainers. And then new coming trainer is also from Australia. You think that you're facing a little bit of competitions, even higher, tougher?
Well, you know, competition in Hong Kong is going to be here every day.
More than in Australia, you think?
Well, I would think so. Look, it's a different environment, it's a smaller pool, and but wherever you go, it's all about opportunity. I mean, horse racing is actually a numbers game, so you need to have fresh blood, you need to have some quality horses, and more so in Hong Kong than anywhere else, because you've got choice on where you can go and where you can place your horses. You can be a lot smarter the way you place your horses in other countries, and certainly in Australia you've got a lot more a choice of where you can go, what distances and what tracks, and whether you run or don't run from wide barriers and wet tracks or whatever. So whereas Hong Kong, there's nowhere to run and hide, you know. It's the competition is there week in, week out, and the races are the races, and you have to turn up and compete. So, you know, whether it be Michael Freedman coming in or whether it's John Size or John Moore, they're there every week, and you know, you can't be worried about that. You just got to back your own judgment, work with what you've got, and try and get the best out of it.
And you have a very good result training fillies, but in Hong Kong, you think the environment really not suitable for that?
You know, Elegant Fashion's the big brand name when it comes to fillies. So she's not actually a filly, she was a mare. She came as a 4-year-old. So I think that's the key, you know. She came as an older, more mature horse, whereas if you bring a young filly to Hong Kong, I think it's going to be very testing for them. But we haven't had many to compare because we haven't had many here, so you can't sort of say that they won't work here, but I think it's probably you know, very dangerous to bring a young filly to Hong Kong. But an older mature mare, how many people are going to bring an older mature mare in? It's so that's why we don't see too many. But if you get the likes of a group mare, as a 4-year-old, if they're coming in with high class ability, I think they're no problem for Hong Kong.
How about in the future, we are starting to build up a training center in Chongfa in China. Is a good environment to train a stayer or fillies?
Well, it certainly might help. You know, it's quite difficult here to maintain the longevity when they're just going around a circle every day, and you know, weight bearing on the same legs. It's you know, it's quite tough to get the miles, and as I said, the longevity. You know, horses that need to be going for 3 or 4 or 5 seasons, and there's no change. There's no water walkers, there's no swimming pool, no beaches, no treadmills, and there's no uphill paddocks and gallops and all those sort of things we can use in Australia to help the longevity and to help the miles in the legs and to help these horses run distances. But that's probably hence why we don't have the program with the longer distance races. So, you know, with the likes of Chongfa, you know, I haven't seen the final product yet, but I assume it's going to be a little bit better environment, and perhaps you know, that will help the longevity of our horses, and it might influence the hierarchy to program some longer races.
To make a success in a training career, I think the most important to me is horse, to get the right horse. John Moore seems like have a way to getting quite a good horse from UK and even from Australia. And how about you, David? You should have resources to get a good horse for the owners in Australia too.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's a question everybody asks all the time. You know, why does John Moore always get the good horse? Well, if you see most of his horses, there's not too many cheap ones, and not too many people have the same budgets as John, and I suppose that's the answer that everybody gives. I mean, he has, you know, he has a number of big budget orders, and he has a number of them come in every year, whereas other people don't. So I think it's pretty tough going out there now, you know, is to try and source the horses. Everybody's looking for the same thing. Everybody's got the information, and that comes down to, you know, a big demand for a very small supply, and he who has the most money wins, and most of the time it's John Moore. So, you know, that's why it's so hard to break into the big league. It's, you know, to get the opportunity to have those better class of horses, you need the bigger tickets, and yeah, it's hard to find.
You were saying that you don't have really budget owners, but I don't think so. You have few owners spend quite a lot of money in ISG, the Hong Kong International Sales, like Jing Wing, you know. But the price recently is getting quite crazy too. What do you think of the ISG?
But that's not my budget. Well, that's their budget for sure. But lucky to get Jing and you know, bang, he delivered straight away. You know, we've still got a little bit of work to do with him at the barriers, but hopefully he's you know, he's still got a lot more wins to come if we can get his barrier manners sorted out. The budgets for the Hong Kong sale, look, we all know most of them are replacement permits. There's no normal PPG permits or PP permits being used as their tickets there. They're all sort of reserve permits or replacement permits, and it creates you know, a very false market on the day. And yeah, I've had a few horses out of the sale and some success and some not so good, but I think it's improving, it's getting better, but it's all about, you have to pay, don't you?
Talk about your new boy, Poon.
Yeah.
Training Poon, how's the boy going? You think he's doing well? He's quite successful at first day.
He's very keen, and he had a really good mentor in Adelaide in South Australia, and he had some great success. So he's done a really good job thus far, but he's got a hell of a lot more work to do, and you know, a big job ahead of him. He's very patient. He's very he's got great attention to detail, and he was a superstar jockey himself. So he's getting a lot of good advice. He had a lot of good advice before he even got here. For me personally, you know, I've grown up in racing since I was born into it. We're from a big racing family. My father was a jockey and a trainer, and you know, there's been a lot of riders, you know, gone through my lifetime that I've seen and grown up with, and you know, I've done a lot of video form with, you know, with form students, and you know, I'll bring what I can to the table for Matthew to try and help him, but you know, to finesse his riding skills, I think I'll leave that to Felix.
A lot of people wanted to know, wow, you are bachelors, golden and diamond bachelors, we say that. How come you decided to really marry a Chinese girl? Different, very, you know, different background. I do her interview before, you know that. She told me that you make her smile. Okay. So.
Yeah, look, we were going out for a long time, and you know, she's a pretty special girl. She's you know, she's achieved a lot herself, and yeah, we just I don't know, we get on very well, even though there's a bit of an age gap between us. You know, she's learning a lot more about the racing. It's not her #1 passion or anything, and that's not, we didn't meet on the track, but look, yeah, I'm really enjoying it and looking forward to finally settling down.